Hi everybody. During my time in the visual effects, not just the visual effects industry, but rather my time as a teacher, I've taught for one, two, well maybe about 2 years now. Well, my 2 years as a teacher, um, and also from all my time, teaching 10-minute drawing techniques, and also doing just being participating in a lot of online communities, drawing. I hear a lot of these common beliefs. Specifically, it's seven common beliefs. There are more. This is not a comprehensive list, but I'm going to choose 7 common beliefs about drawing and painting that I hear a lot, and I have something to say about. So the first one is that randomness. I hear this a lot. Randomness is the best way to infuse your work with spontaneity. There are a lot of people. Sometimes I see people voicing this. Sometimes I see it in their work where people are just drawing random things, and it's because they want to be spontaneous. They want that spark. They want something to be interesting, so they're going to go with something that's random. Now, the only problem with randomness is that if you are, say, being asked by an art director to come up with something specific, randomness isn't going to help you. Randomness is unreliable. Randomness is random. When you have a certain deadline, when you have a specific deadline, and you got to get something done, you can't rely on randomness. I'm afraid you actually have to think. You're gonna have to do some amount of forethought. You're gonna have to plan things out. You can't just leave things to the roll of the dice. And there are a lot of artists that I know who fall into these things they call art slumps. An art slump is when they can't decide on what to draw. They can't think of anything to draw. They don't want to draw, and it's because, and often the case is because they rely on randomness to give them their ideas. And here's one of the other reasons why they run into an art slump. They run into art slumps. The second reason, common belief number 2, this art slump is often caused by common belief number 2, and that is, being original means doing something that nobody else has done. So, that means looking over at someone else's work and saying, "Oh, gee, that's already been done. Someone else has already done it. I can't do the same thing." Right? So that's not always the case. Um, I think if you want to be original, let's change this belief just a little bit. Rather than saying, that you have to do something that no one else has done, how about this? Solve a problem that no one else has ever solved. So, let's say, for instance, you need to design something. You need to design a special kind of vehicle. Um, you have, oh, here's an example. Let's say it's way off in the future, and you've got a very very toxic. The whole place is flooded. Basically, you've got a lot of flooding, and it's toxic. The water is not just toxic; it's corrosive. So we need to develop a kind of vehicle, for traversing large expanses of toxic, corrosive water. Right? So we don't have too many vehicles like that right now. What are we gonna? How are we gonna design it? What's the bottom of the? If it's a boat, what kind of materials is this boat going to be made out of? To resist this type of corrosion. Or are we going to develop a kind of vehicle which hovers over the surface and simply does not come in contact with the corrosive liquid? These are how you get ideas. Is that you have to solve problems. When you're solving problems, you can think to yourself, how will this boat be propelled? What's the fuel economic situation like? Is there still gas left to power this vehicle? Is it nuclear powered? Is it solar powered? What will store the energy? Where do we store the energy? What's gonna how does this whole thing work? Is it steam powered? Is it coal fired engine? You can choose these things. These are the parameters of the situation, and you have to work around them. You actually use the limitations. It's not about freedom. It's actually about using limitations and working within the limitations to get something that is unique and interesting and spontaneous. And it's because that's what lets you. That's what being spontaneous and original is you're solving a problem that no one else has solved, and you're spontaneous because you're solving the problems on the fly. Okay, so number 3. And this is formulas will deaden your work. People have problems with formulas. They don't want, they feel that all of their work is going to be the same. Well, yes, if the formula does not allow for any sort of variation, the formula, the thing about the formula, a formula is that a formula must take a given situation. Formulas are engineered by people, people like teachers, people like artists. There was a time when we didn't have formulas and someone had to make them up. So why don't you make up a formula? Why don't you change a formula? Why don't you add one? If the only reason why people can't make formulas is because they don't understand what drives the work. They don't understand the formula. They don't understand why the formula works. They don't understand how drawing works. There's a lot of things that they don't understand. Um, and I find that people will say, you know, you don't need a formula. We'll just rely on our imagination. And the problem with that is that most people don't even know what an imagination is. To them, imagination is just, some fairy comes down and touches them on the head and they get this great idea, and I'm afraid I don't have a fairy that comes down and gives me, any ideas because it was killed by the ceiling fan. Um, so what do I do is I work by formulas. I figure out, well, what is an imagination? Imagination is being able to envision things, that have yet to be, right? You're envisioning something that hasn't been made yet. Well, what does a computer do? What does Pixar use? Pixar uses computers to make images. Pixar's, this whole system that renders all the pictures out works based on mathematical formulas. Um, Imagination, it's what these computers are doing is that they're simulating, light and mass and surface. They're simulating a lot of natural phenomena to generate a picture. And you know, in that respect, simulation and imagination are almost one and the same. Take for instance, I can tell you to imagine an object, with the same dimensions as a pop can. I can tell you something like that, and I can say, imagine a cylinder that's 2 inches wide, 5 inches tall. You know, there, I've given you parameters, I've given you specifications, I've given you something that is specific. And in your mind, you should be able to imagine based on these specifications, cylinder of those dimensions. That's what a computer does. A computer has mathematical formula for imagining, for imagining, something based on given specifications. And when you work on a 3D software, all you do, for the entire time that you're working on that software is you're adding and changing specifications for the computer to imagine things for you. So when you draw, it's a much more direct way of going in there and dealing with, you know, putting the specifications on paper. So this is the biggest problem with people who have trouble with their imaginations, is that they don't have the ability to specify anything. They don't have any formulas. They don't have any formulas. They don't know, what specifications or what parameters are necessary for them to be able to envision what it is that they want. Instead, they're just kind of sitting there dumb and just hoping that something will come to them. They're sitting there and they're like, imagine, 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 imagination land, and it doesn't work. So you need a formula, you need to design formulas, you need to change formulas, you need to see what is it that you're trying to imagine, you need to figure out which parameters are important to the formula, and it's constantly changing, it's constantly evolving. And so the formula itself may be this dead thing, but the thing that makes the formula, you or me, I mean, that's what is going to say whether or not you're alive or dead, is your ability to think and to devise a formula and to figure out what parameters you're going to need to imagine something. Okay. Common belief number 4. Aha! Mysteries are exciting. It's nice to savor the mystery. This is again from the group of people who hate formulas because they don't like it when things are neatly packaged into a formula. They like it when they can't. They like it when something is fresh and new and exciting and mysterious. And so they like the mystery. They think, well, gee, it's like a magic trick. If you look at a magic trick, someone makes the bunny, appear out of the hat. Oh, it's a magic trick. It's interesting. It's a mystery. It's cool. And if they show us, that the hat actually has a false bottom in it, and inside the table there's that's where the cage of the rabbit is. When people see the trick, then suddenly they're like, oh, that's not very interesting. Well, guess what? You are the artist. You are the magician. So if you uncover the mystery, the magician, to the magician, the tricks themselves aren't that interesting. For him, he is always trying to find out, well, how can I find another way to make another illusion for these people, to fool the crowd. And so he is the guy that creates the mysteries. You create the mysteries. You are the guy to figure this stuff out. And maybe it's not exciting to you, but the thing is that the more mysteries that you unravel and solve on your own, the more you will be able to excite other people. That's the idea, is that, and here's another thing. God damn it, the world is full of fucking mysteries. You're not going to run out of mysteries anytime soon. You can spend your entire life unraveling mysteries and you will not run out of mysteries. Don't be so arrogant to believe that you are going to be able to figure out everything and that you'll be able to solve every single mystery. Next one. Details make the drawing. I see this expressed both in words and I see it expressed in practice. See people who are drawing all the time, drawing these really, really tiny little details, and when they see a piece of quote-unquote finished work, they see, oh wow, they got the stripes in the guy's shirts and the wrinkles in the fabric, right down to the little bits of stubble and the little pores and every single strand of hair. Oh, there's so much detail. I absolutely love it. It's like he crammed so much detail in there. And they totally get off on that detail. But here's the thing. When they start trying to draw, they start trying to draw every single wrinkle and pore and everything, and it just looks awful. And the thing about details is that you don't spend your time throwing in detail. You spend your time making a picture, making a structure, like a container. You make a container that is capable of holding detail. This is why you see me doing things like drawing boxes, cones, and cubes and whatnot. These things are containers for details. These things are structures that are capable of supporting detail. Because if the detail has no structure underneath it, it all just looks like, it's like a cake without any icing on it. It's like icing without a cake underneath it to support it. That's basically what you wind up with. So, details, you can have a drawing that survives without details. The thing about the details is, you can have a drawing that has no details and is merely merely a large object, right? It's like in the case of me, right? Why bother drawing every single strand of my hair, when you're starting the drawing? Who cares about the little strand of hair? How about the rest of my freaking head, right? And my torso? Aren't those details? Those are pretty big details, in fact. Why don't you draw the big details first? Draw the big details and use the big details as a framework, as a container for these smaller details. How do these smaller details fit over the big details? So, that's the thing. You got to be able to look beyond your nose. You got to be able to look beyond the one, that's the tunnel visioning. Being able to stare at one stupid little tiny freaking wrinkle. It's the wrinkle does not make the drawing. The drawing will survive without that wrinkle. It's really, the drawing will not survive without the guy's torso. It will not survive without his head. So get those things first. Do I sound kind of pissed off? I know I sound kind of pissed off. It's because I'm a teacher. It's because I keep encountering this so often, and I see so many guys just working away in these little noodle drawings, and it's so annoying to see it over and over again. And I gotta keep smacking them upside the head and saying, "Don't do that." Okay, so next up, common belief number 6. All of these things are things that I wind up having to smack people over the heads with. You have to pour your feelings into the drawing. It's like, oh, and this is best characterized by people who I see who they in life drawing class, they'll sit there and they'll take the pencil and they go and they'll be scrawling back and forth with a pencil and just putting a lot of elbow grease into the work. They think, oh, the drawing's got a lot of feeling. They want the drawing that looks like the Glenn Keane drawing. Now, mind you, Glenn Keane's drawing they do appear to look like they have a lot of feeling. He's got these really big caveman strokes, but that is not necessarily feeling. The feeling is not something expressed by manual labor. Feeling is something that you get when you look at the image. You can create an image that evokes feelings. Um, Drawing is a creation of images. You're pushing a message to somebody. Um, this is You can have an image that when you look at it evokes a feeling of disgust. There's the Power Five, for instance. There's Goatsy. There's Lemon Party. Those drawings, or rather those pictures, they evoke feeling because of what's going on in them. And this is how, if you want to evoke feelings in someone, then you have to consider what is going on in your drawing, and what, what are you gonna show to people that makes them feel this way or that way. You know, Sometimes, if you want to make someone feel, righteously indignant, then you can show a picture of someone getting away with something. Show a picture of someone who is, of someone who has, done something terrible, murdered someone and then, got off, and now they're scot free and whatnot. They were acquitted. That's what pisses people off, right? So what's going on in the image that is going to make someone pissed off? You want to make someone, feel, happy or sad or this way or that way, then, you have to set that up. This is what telling a story is all about. Telling a story is really about, what are the images that people see? What are the things that occur in the story that make them feel a certain way? And then you make the images of those things happening. There's the intent, there's the action and the result. When you draw those things, that's how you get feelings into a drawing. That's what you have to consider. So anyway, next one, common belief. Number 7. Everyone has over 9,000 bad drawings in them, and the sooner you get rid of them, the better. So everyone has over 9,000 bad drawings in them. This is something that is very often perpetuated, by other teachers, other professionals in the industry. The problem is that the saying itself is very easily misconstrued. It's misunderstood. I would say that in order, through the course of you getting better, you may generate 9,000 bad drawings or more. But not necessarily that if you draw 9,000 bad drawings, you'll get better. Everybody has a way of drawing, whether they know it or not. How you do a drawing, even if it's something really bad, if it's sitting there with your pencil in your wrong hand and you're grinding away, that is a way of drawing. It is an awful way of drawing, mind you. It doesn't get much done. It's very inefficient. It gets you crappy results, but it is a way of drawing. And if you make 9,000 drawings that same way, you are going to get the same result. The only thing that will occur from doing it that way 9,000 times is that you will get comfortable with doing it badly. So, don't. If you want to get better, this is the problem, is that people get comfortable doing the same damn thing over and over again, and when they are shown a better way of doing things, they say, I don't want to do it because it doesn't feel comfortable. I'm comfortable with doing it the bad way. And if you really want to get better, then you have to take it upon yourself to do something uncomfortable, to do the better way, the uncomfortable way, and to practice that better way until it becomes comfortable. That is how you get better. It's not by procrastinating and saying, oh, I'll learn it later. If you want to get better, then you got to put the effort into it, and there's no other way about it. I'm sorry. And then there are people who just say, well, I can't seem to quash the habit, or this or that. Well, some people will say you have to be born with drawing, and you have to be born capable of doing this kind of stuff. And I'll tell you I'll tell you for sure that 5 years ago I was not able to do half the stuff that not even a third, even a fifth of what I can do now. And I look at all the artists. There were a great deal many artists who I used to look up to. I thought I'd never be as good as that guy, but I'm actually on the level or better. There are many artists who I managed to surpass. And there are still many more artists who are absolutely going to utterly crush me, but I never say to myself, I'll never be as good as these people, because I'm always willing to give up a comfortable way of doing things if I can find something better. You teach yourself these things. And, you know, at least, from drawing to drawing, you have to be willing to say to yourself, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to try something, not just I'm going to try something different, I'm going to say this way doesn't work because it doesn't solve this problem, because it doesn't take into account how the surface turns, because it doesn't take into account, where the lighting is in relation to the surface, because it doesn't take into account you're changing the formula. You have to change your formula. When you change your formula, you change the way that you draw, and that's how you get better. So anyway, there's probably more of these, but anyway, that's enough for now. So I'll catch you guys later.